to think of questions.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Season 3, Episode 3, another edition of the Surf and Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Leese, here with my good friend and co-host, Richard Harris.
Hello,
We are brought to you today by our sponsors, Reprise, as well as Scratchpad. Check them out. Get your 2022 off to a rip-roaring start. Richard, how you feeling? How you feeling, dude, after your Georgia Bulldogs won the national championship?
Nervous, because I'm afraid it's going to take another 40 years.
Oh, for God's sake. This one victory should last you the rest of your life. You won't even be here in 40 more years.
I'm old enough to remember the last one. So how's that?
Yeah. Well, you were like 10 years old the last time they won the championship, right?
Yes.
Well, congratulations. I'm glad you're riding high. We are here with our friend and Surf and Sales alum, Alexis Scott, Partnerships Manager over at our friends Aspireship. Welcome to the show, Alexis.
Thank you very much for having me, Scott and Richard.
Of course.
Have you recovered from the bug bites of Costa Rica?
I was one of the lucky few. I think I had like 2 or 3, I did pack bug spray, unlike some of our friends. So I was very well prepared and reaped the benefits of that.
Well, there's a pro tip for anybody who's thinking about going to the Surf and Sales Summit in 2022 in May or a couple different weeks in November. Bring bug spray and use it.
Yes.
Well, and read the manual, right? It said that in the.
It did. You know, not many people like to read instructions these days.
Well, lesson learned, right?
Yeah.
Okay. If it's not on YouTube, they don't know what to do.
It's true. Alexis, tell everybody what a partnerships manager does and what that means, and give people some context for your current role.
Yeah. So in the case point of Aspireship, being a partnership manager is managing relationships with companies that we do business with. So I'm managing hiring partnerships. The companies that we work with, they come to us for a specific need, but the goal is really to maintain that relationship long-term and to be a resource for them continuously. So yes, it's, you're making a contracted kind of agreement, but it's not just a sale or a transactional sale. It's, a long-term relationship.
So I want to learn a little bit about how you go about kind of identifying your ideal customer profile, your ICP, because I'm over here and I'm thinking, okay, well, literally every company on the planet seems to be hiring salespeople right now. So how do you figure out, like, where do I start? Who do I target first and why? How would somebody go about that who's maybe in a similar partnership role as you?
I think for me, the first thing was identifying the titles of folks who make those decisions. So who is it that you will be talking to that has the decision-making power? For me, it is sales leaders and also HR and talent leaders. That was step 1. And then step 2 is identifying the types of companies that these leaders could potentially work at that would be open to the relationship. So in my case in particular, I'm looking for companies that are trying to bridge a gap in filling their talent needs. It could be for one of 2 reasons. It could be they're growing tremendously quickly. They've just received funding, and so that's one scenario. And the other scenario is they don't have a talent department. So they're really looking for help hiring. So just kind of identifying the pain points of particular company personas, that's been successful for me as well.
How do you, because you're going into you said the head of sales, but oftentimes do they really control the purse strings, right? Like, you've certainly got to get them on board. Like, I get it. And, they're going to be your champion, but who else is a part of it, right? Maybe it's the ideal collaboration profile. It's not a ideal customer profile.
Yeah, it really
collaborative
depends.
sale.
It depends on the company, quite frankly. The smaller the company, the more power the head of sales has in the decision. Obviously, the larger the company, the more decision makers become a part of it. I have had, I guess you'd call them enterprise size deals with public companies where, they took 9 months to get that relationship established. And we had head of talent, sales managers, SDR managers, recruiters. I mean, it was like an entire compilation of anyone who would have any say and who joined that sales team. So it really depends. But, also with smaller startups, the CEO could potentially have, play in that.
Right. And sorry, go ahead, Scott.
I was going to say, how helpful is it for somebody if you can bring in the CEO? Does that muddy the water a little bit and slow you down in some way, or is that like, oh, I got the CEO involved, like I'm closing this deal now for sure? I
love it. That's the head of the castle right there. If the CEO is bought into what we do and how we do it, the chances of that closing are very high.
How do you make that jump in the gap, right? VPs of sales know it, they get it. But then you do have to go to that CEO or CFO or whatever. What are the things you try to bring up to them at the C-suite that maybe you don't have to too much at the VP or director level because they just get it in general?
So in the words of Aspireship, the above the line buyer, they're really looking at results. They're not so worried about how we're going to accomplish this. They're more worried about what the results will bring to them. So focusing on that has proven very fruitful. Got it.
How did you choose to go into this? Like, has this always been your background, this recruitment piece, or
No. No, absolutely not. So my background primarily has been hospitality sales, but that actually played a critical component into how I ended up where I am and why I'm so passionate about it. So I worked in hotels for many years. And when I moved to Boise, Idaho, if you've ever been here, there's not a lot of hotels and they're not fancy. And I just knew that was going to be a turning point in my career. I was kind of done with that portion of my life. I ended up taking a job with a marketing company. I thought I wanted to do digital marketing. That was not what I wanted to do. Ended up taking a job in sales with a company that they call themselves a technology company, and it sort of is. I mean, they have a technology component, but they're selling vacation rental, short-term rentals, and was doing amazing there. Grew a team of 70, and like we acquired a company. I mean, it was like the foot was on the gas, everything was going great, and COVID hit. And
then nobody wanted to buy the swampland in Florida anymore, Richard.
Well, and my reservation sales team turned into a cancellation center. Oof. So that was a tough blow. I mean, we were literally working, 16, 17, 18 hours a day, and it was not good. I
want to talk about that for a second. But first I'm going to say, Scott, have you hired Alexis to help you with the Thursday night sales hard no tour in negotiating with the hotels yet?
I would love that.
No,
you need to hire me for that. I'll just do it for free. Shit, I know what to ask for.
Well, there you go. Done.
There you go. You're welcome, Scott.
I got you. Either hotel or short-term rentals. I got you. I know all the things about that. That's
my goodness.
There you go. So I want to, that was, we've never talked about that. Right. And so what did that do now that we're out of it? What are like 2 or 3?
Are we out of it?
Well, going from a sales center to a cancellation center, right? Like overnight.
Yep.
I'm curious, like that probably affected, hopefully people grew from that to sort of look at, okay, here are things we need to change on the front end in general. What kind of things did you learn from that process?
Well, so what I'm about to tell you is what I learned. I remember about 3 or 4 days in, and I remember making an iPhone video to send to my team to just say thank you, because they were working, 16, 17, 18 hours a day, because we just could not handle the volume. I mean, you have to think of like, 1,000 tickets in the queue of emails. I mean, you're just looking at this going, how in the hell are we going to do this?
My blood pressure is rising right now.
I know.
Gives me so much anxiety to think about that.
Well, and one of them messaged me privately and she goes, are we going to get fired? And I said, no, absolutely not. I said, look at what we're doing right now. They need us. I mean, this is like, they need us. Who is going to do all of this work? I was wrong. A couple of days later, not only did she get fired, but I got fired. Our entire team got fired. And it was very traumatic for all of us.
So what happened to all those customers?
They sat in the queue.
Oh my God. Wow. Has the company gone belly up?
No. So they got a loan from the American government, and then they went public.
Oh God.
Get the fuck out of here.
There's gonna be like a documentary or a movie. We've already probably seen the movie about this kind of situation.
Well, and it's, I will be totally honest with you, and this is me probably oversharing, but I do want to share this because there is an emotional component to this, where it's like my friends who I worked with, who I respect and who I value their relationship with, and who I cheer on because I love them and they work so hard. That's the one side of things where I'm like, oh my God, guys, you did it. Like, you really did it. I'm so proud of you. And then there's the other side of me that's like, F all of you. Like the leadership that fucked thousands of people and never said sorry and didn't treat you right. Like, look at you now, you got what you wanted. So I'm very torn on that. Like, it's hard for me.
What was it like? Because I'm listening, I'm thinking, well, they just made a liar out of you, because you're like, no, you're not going to get fired. And then a couple of days later, everybody, including you, gets fired. Like,
Yep.
What was the process for bouncing back and recovering from that?
Well, I think it was very clear to my entire team that I had no idea. Like, I did not know this was coming. I got cut too. It would have been different, I think, if I had been.
You stayed.
Yeah. And so I'm still in touch with quite a few of my team members from that job. And, I cheer them on. And one of them went through aspireship and she is freaking kicking ass. I posted about her today on LinkedIn. I mean, it's just, we have all ended up in better places now anyway. So I always look at it as a favor. You did me a favor, because I probably would have stayed and been miserable dealing with all that shit. So thank you for setting me free.
Yeah, Scott, I've done that. And except I knew what was happening. I knew they were getting fired. Not for today's episode, but I could walk
painful.
Yeah, it was horrible to lie to people for months. We were transitioning the team from Northern California to Iowa, where it cost half, in salary. So I've been there. So I feel it. I understand. So so I want to dive in a little personal for you, right? So when you came to Surf and Sales, how far out of that was for your comfort zone?
Well, as far as travel, not at all. I love to travel. Travel is my passion in life. I love it. Like, if I didn't have kids, I'd be gone. I'd be one of those nomads that like lived everywhere.
This is how I spend all of my downtime, by the way, just daydreaming of where I would go if I had no kids.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I drive my husband crazy because I subscribe to Scott's Cheap Flights. If you don't subscribe, you need to. And every day I'm like, we could go here. He goes, can you just shut up?
I just sent Scott cheap flights for
he literally just did, like a couple days ago.
Yeah, it's amazing. But anyway, so that was that. And then I got thrown into that last minute, so I wasn't even planning on going.
Like how last minute?
A week and a half before.
Right. And that's why I wanted to ask, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is right. So you get told you're going to go to this thing, you know about it because you guys supported us, which we appreciate. Are you like, thrilled? Okay, cool? Or are you like, wait a minute, I love to travel. However, this is not my comfort zone.
Thrilled. Aside from the surf component, that was the piece that was like, I don't know if that's for me. But I knew Scott a lot more because of Thursday Night Sales, but I knew you from, LinkedIn and whatever. And I was just excited. I was super excited. I will tell you though, when I got the shuttle confirmation to the hotel, from the hotel to the house, of course I have to go like do my due diligence on who I'm riding with. And Tim from Salesforce was on that. And I was like, oh my God, this is like, these people have like good jobs. Like, oh, what are we going to talk about? Like, it's just me, like who, like little old me. And now Tim and I are great friends. I mean, we text all the time and whatever. So I was a little bit nervous because I knew the caliber of attendee was way up there. And I was very pleasantly surprised at how grounded everyone was and just how open they were to learning and sharing and becoming real friends.
Tell everybody, what's the favorite thing for you to travel with?
I know the answer. I know the
Yes,
answer.
I do. It is my Keurig.
That's
It's
right.
my-
Alexis travels with her own coffee maker, little mini one. And I was like, I like this woman. I'm like, this
You
is
were
like
jealous.
someone.
You were jealous you didn't have that French roast waiting for you.
I know. I was like, and believe me, part of the fun for Costa Rica is like just sort of, all right, you get Costa Rica coffee, and you get 20 people who all make it differently. So some days it's light and some days it's dark and
Yep.
some, so, but I love that about you because it showed me that you're self-aware of the things that matter to you and that little things do matter, right? Like, and it's not the, hey, let's be posh and, bougie about our coffee. It was like, hey, this is important to me and little things matter. And it makes you more comfortable, which I wish more people would find in their day.
Well, it's funny. I think there's like this connotation with the word particular, because I always say that. I'm like, I'm not picky, I'm particular. I know what I like. And if I have to like do what I have to do to make it what I like, I don't care. I'll do that. I'm not trying to be a pain in the ass. I'm just trying to make myself happy. So you don't hear me bitching about the coffee. Like, well, let me take care of that for you. So I'm like that about a lot of things. Like I know what I like, and it's not anyone else's responsibility to like make things the way that I like them. But like, I'm very self-aware. Yes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm gonna go a little bit deeper on some personal stuff because I want people to hear this too. Is that we know each other, right? We've spent 5 or 6 days
Yep.
together. It's you really get to know people at the event. And you came on the podcast, and before we even started recording, you were like, "I am so nervous."
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So and I think a lot of people have that, right? Like, and so, what were you nervous about? Or I don't know, maybe you're still nervous. I don't know. What is that?
It's an interesting situation when you have developed relationships with people personally, and I could talk to you and Scott all day long if it's not being recorded, right? Like we're friends and we're talking and this and that. But when you add that publication of it, or you lift that veil, and now all of a sudden people are going to be listening to you, and then there's that fear of judgment. It creates, for me, a sense of insecurity. Now, I know that's within myself, and it's very important for me to overcome that and say, little voice in my head, shut up, you can do this, and it's not a big deal. But I think that's why I was kind of nervous, like fear of judgment.
I saw that you wrote the other day that you have a goal to do like 4 episodes or something. I think it was 4.
3.
3 in 2022. So good for you to, push yourself out comfort zone and get stuff out there. And it's also part of, go ahead.
Questions, right? Like you didn't send me questions that I could prepare. So like that was an added sense of like, oh, what are they going to ask me? What if I don't know the answer? What am I going to say?
What's interesting is if you went and did a poll, go ahead. Maybe you'll do this, Alexis. We'll give you a little bit of homework. This would be part of your like LinkedIn personal branding journey. Like maybe you run a poll. It's like, how many of you who go on podcasts prefer to be sent over a list of questions that you can prep for versus not having any idea and just kind of having a winged, candid conversation? I'd be very curious of the results, because I actually think that most people now don't want the list of questions, don't want to fill out like paperwork and all this kind of stuff. But maybe I'm wrong.
But it also, I posted about this too. I posted about a lot of things. It's that sense of, if you ask me questions about my personal experience, I will speak to you with conviction. I am the expert of my life. I am the expert of my experiences. But if you start asking me technical questions about sales, even if I know them, I have this like inner freak out of like, well, what if someone who's like really high up in sales hears me and thinks, nah, she's totally wrong. She's an idiot. That's not right. And that's where I start to get nervous and my confidence goes down. I could very well know the answer, but articulating that becomes very challenging because I'm in my own head. And that's kind of the whole thing about the podcast. Like if I'm on a podcast where I'm talking about, transitioning into sales, I've transitioned into sales. I'm happy to share my story and what worked for me and all of that. I can speak to that with much confidence. Like anything like personal, I have a lot more confidence. And so I don't know, that I think was part of my nerves too, is like, I know this is surf and sales and it's about sales. And so I'm still gaining my footing on how to feel like an expert enough to be on a podcast about it, you know?
I can tell you what makes, I think, Scott, all of you, I mean, anybody can disagree. People's authenticity is what makes them an expert. Their authenticity of, I don't know the answer to that question, or gee, gosh, I don't know, I got to think about it. That's what makes you an expert. And that's what makes people want to hear more, because you are willing to be that vulnerable, in my opinion. So maybe flipping it a little bit is Jedi mind trick it a little bit.
Yeah.
How would you encourage yourself, other than the, hey, come on, you can do this, right? Which we all do, right? My mom always said, pull yourself up by your bootstraps,
right?
Which I never understood. Like I've had boots and I don't understand, but
I can help you with that.
Okay. How do you say it kindly? How does Alexis say it kindly to Alexis to say, hey, you have this nervousness? Like, how do you coach yourself to get over it? And the reason I'm asking is I want other people who've ever had any level of the imposter syndrome or any of those kinds of things. I just want them to hear a different person's perspective on it.
Yeah. So a couple of things that I do. Number one is, and even last week, Scott, when I was texting you about my fears and all this stuff, I rationalize like, this is imposter syndrome. Like I literally said that to myself. Now, did that make it better? No, I was still nervous and I was still freaking out or whatever. The next thing I did was I reached out to some folks that are close to me and I was just kind of sharing with them how I was feeling. And they shared a couple of things. Number one, their personal experiences. And number two, their confidence in me, which it's always, having a hype person is always helpful. Just someone to kind of cheer you on or whatever. And then the last thing, I'm a words person. So like, people joke that when you come in my house, you need glasses because there's so many signs with fucking words on them from Hobby Lobby and TJ Maxx or whatever. Like, I love that. Show you this. So my girlfriend gave me this. This says, chin up, princess, the crown slips. So I've got that. Christine Rogers just sent me this. Today's quote of the day here says, the quality.
Nobody sends me shit. It's shit. Nobody sends me anything.
This is perfect. The quality of your life comes down to the thoughts that you think on a regular basis. That's for January 12th.
See, there you go, Richard. You keep saying nobody sends you shit, and that becomes your reality.
Right.
That's right. But, just words. If I can give myself some like encouragement, either with a quote or with something to think about and marinate on, I really do think about it. It's like, what are the words that I'm telling myself? Okay, I need to be positive. I need to be like encouraging myself. Or the one yesterday was about change. Like, if you want change, you need to be the change. Quit waiting around for shit to happen. Like, take initiative. So like these little snippets, I try to apply to my mindset. Like, for real. I know it sounds cheesy, but I really do.
I get it. I have this quote on this piece of paper over here behind me somewhere right there, which you can't really read. But my son said this like out of nowhere, maybe 5-6 years ago when he was like 7-8 years old. And it said, you don't get good at anything by giving up except giving up. And I remember I was like, where the fuck did that come from? What are you, some guru back here, this little child? I'm like, what the heck? So yeah, I get it. I have those little sayings all over the place as well. Get it. You gotta, like you said, you gotta surround yourself with what you need to make you feel good and therefore successful.
Speaking of stuff in my Springsteen poster. So
yeah. Speaking of like the environment and all that stuff, do you think you could do your job successfully in an office 5 days a week as you do it now remotely, or no?
So it's really interesting. I go to the office. So I'm actually flying there in a couple of weeks. And it is.
You don't go there every single day, 5 days a week?
No. I work from home.
Yeah.
While it is incredibly energizing to be in the office that week, it is also incredibly draining. Because it's not just about the work that I'm doing, it's about the relationships that I'm trying to build with my team members while I'm there. And so it's like 2 jobs during 1 job. Could I, like, technically, yes. Would I want to? No, I would not. I really love the ability and opportunity to work remotely. I'm also very grateful for the opportunity to go to the office so that I can work on those relationships, but there's a lot of distraction.
Yeah. How do you,
Hold on one second. So there's more distraction at work than there is at home. Is that what you said?
I am a social person, my friend. I want to talk about all the things. Let's talk about my coffee. Let's talk about my shirt. Let's talk about my purse. Let's talk about where I had dinner last night. Let's talk about all the things. I'm the lady that needs the sign that says, like, do not talk to me because I'm trying to focus.
Right. But it's interesting because I don't think people say, like, particularly when it started, and I think it's legitimate if our kids were homeschooled and stuff like that, there's so many distractions, right? But I think people kind of realize that you get a lot more shit done when you get 20 minutes at home uninterrupted than if you had 20 minutes in the office. So
Yeah, for sure.
what are you supposed to do if you're like me when you can't get 20 minutes uninterrupted anywhere you go?
Well,
drink.
I don't know. I mean, maybe do like 15 minutes. I don't know.
Yeah.
Wait,
Yeah. I do 5-minute sprints of work. 1 5-minute sprint, an hour of work. Yeah.
well, Scott, why? Oh, wait, I gotta just for a second. Why do you have such a hard time? Because I know your kids aren't home all day.
I'm making a little bit of a joke. I have to take like fairly dramatic steps. I have to turn off notifications all over the place across all of the different channels. I have to get, my texts off my laptop, all this kind of thing. I have to not have email in front of me. It's like, because during the course of this hour that we're going to be on this Zoom, I will probably get 200 different notifications of some sort.
Oh my God.
For sure. Think about it. I got LinkedIn because I made a post today, so I haven't even looked at that. That's going to have, worst case scenario, probably going to have 25,000 views and a couple, 100 comments that I got to do something with. I tweet, so that gives me a whole nother set of like notifications. I got email. I have 16 clients who are emailing me or slacking me stuff, right? I have private coaching clients. I have Patreon members. I have Thursday night sales community members. I have Surf and Sales members. I got my kids' fucking school calling me that 30% of the people in school have COVID, all this kind of shit, right? You want me to go on?
Yes, because it's hilarious.
Yes, because Richard just likes, now Alexis has anxiety. I started off with anxiety thinking about her 1,000 support tickets. Right. And now I've transferred that on over to her. But
I want to do an episode with you, Scott, on that. I do want to do an episode, but this is about Alexis today. But I think I'm going to make a nice video snippet just for your Thursday night sales.
But I think to her point though, like when you're at home, you're eliminating some of those distractions. And there's nobody walking up to me, tapping me on the shoulder and asking me a question. There's no temptation for me to go over there and talk about, Georgia winning the game and lose 10, 15 minutes down this particular rabbit hole. And if you're like Alexis, who's super social, that could happen all day, every day. I'm not very social and it would still happen to me. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what I was getting at. How do you talk to clients and partners about all this when they're trying to, shove one particular method down everybody's throat? Like a client who's like, nope, everybody's going into the office. Everybody's in Boise in the office 5 days a week. Like
the conversation that I have all the time.
I'm sure that's what I'm getting at. How do you navigate all that?
So there's the reality of the market, and the reality of the market is a few things. So what I always tell them, so let's say, pretend it's New York City, right? You're hiring in New York City. You want them to come into the Manhattan office 5 days a week. So what I tell them is this: look, I could have 100 candidates for you in New York City, amazing candidates. But if none of them want to come into the office 5 days a week, I now have 0 candidates for you. And the reality is that 90% of our hires in the last 90 days have been remote hires. To give you a perspective on how successful, in-person hiring is.
90.
I'm
90.
listening to that. That's amazing. That is just, and are the companies pulling their hair out, or have they kind of gotten over it because they had to live it too?
So it really depends. Some have asked me for ammunition, if you will, to present to leadership, to say like, look, this is the reality of what's going on right now. This is what they're seeing, and I always tell them this too. If you tell me remote, I don't even have to look at my candidate pipeline. I know for a fact, I will immediately have people to present to you who are qualified, talented, ready to rock and roll. If you are location specific, I have to A, assess where everyone is, and then B, I have to see who even wants this job. So timeline longer, candidate pool shrunken significantly. I have even sent like LinkedIn posts with polls to like where, there's 300,000 responses and 75% of people won't even entertain a remote an in-person opportunity, like anything that I can do. But some are insistent, and some have actually come back, a couple months later and said like, yeah, we had to open to remote because we just were not getting the pipeline that we needed. And I was like, I totally get it.
Yeah, they're just really struggling to accept that the power dynamic has changed.
Yeah.
Completely. Yep. What it's like there's a union, but there's no real union.
We're forming an unofficial union.
The sales union.
Yes, we've unionized without there being an official body, and no dues are being paid or anything like that. But yeah, we're taking the power.
I'm trademarking that, by the way.
We've taken the power back a little bit.
Yeah.
But I saw something the other day, and it said something about it's more about the leadership than it is about the actual people you're bringing on. And a lot of it is fear-based, right? They fear that they're not going to have the control. They fear that they're not going to have the visibility. They fear that they're not going to be able to control the outcomes as much if they have remote people as opposed to having people in office. And I think that that's spot on. It's, if you have never led a remote team, I sure hope you have a plan. I really do.
So I want to go into a couple of things around that. So the first thing is, you mentioned some of the ammunition around location, the pipeline, how big, how long, it's going to affect revenue. What's some of the other ammunition you give to people who are listening that may have to go to their CEOs to get approval for work from home? Was there anything else, or were those the primary?
Those are the primary. I mean, that's one of the biggest reasons that people come to us, is they're looking for people who are pre-vetted, qualified, have invested time in learning sales as it is, and who are eager to not just start a job, but start a career, right? So we are, pre-vetting this group of candidates who have proven competency, who are coachable, who are eager, all of that. It is very hard to assess that if you are a hiring manager and just kind of winging this on your own. Right? You're going to you could post and you can have 1 million resumes. Think of how much time it's going to take you to actually go through them. Then how are you going to know the people who don't have the resumes that scream to you on paper, like, sales, like, how do you judge who to talk to or not?
I have a question for the both of you.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with somebody the other day. They'll remain nameless, but they were talking about this, like, almost gated kind of community of sellers. And there was verification that these people, have attained or surpassed quota for, I don't know, 1 year in a row, 2 years in a row, or something like that.
Interesting.
Another verification could be like, let's say this is only sellers who have made W-2'd over 250K or something. Mm-hmm. So the idea is that this is like a legit guaranteed group of people who have proven success. This is not somebody's words on a resume or on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Yep.
This is not even a reference of like, oh yeah, Richard is great. He's the best person to hire. Meanwhile, my data shows Richard was 84% to goal, right? So it's this like group of sellers that are verified somehow as being super, super successful. Mm-hmm. Do you think that companies would flock to that and like go to that place and be like, I want to hire those people. They're a certified, verified member of this like 250K club. Yes, no, crazy. What do you think?
I do.
Why?
because of the verification. I mean, anyone can put anything they want on a resume.
So it therefore increases the odds of that candidate being super successful, you would think, right?
You would think. Now, what you also have to take into account is motivation level,
Yep.
industry.
Yep.
There's and
there's still factors. It's not take.
Yeah, it's not black and white. And that's the point. I mean, hiring itself is not black and white.
Yes.
It's just not.
Yes. But it could be a way to increase your success rate or your odds. What do you think, Richard? I saw you giving a look like you didn't agree.
My first question was going to be, Scott, what do you think I'm going to say? But here's where I've gotten better about myself, particularly when Scott poses these questions, is it is natural for me to be very skeptical of some new ideas like that. Because of that, that means it's a good idea. So I've learned how to ignore myself, right? I'm like opposite George, right? Like I'm going to do the opposite of what I would normally do or say. I think it's, I think the first thing that comes to my mind is, well, why are they leaving? But I think that's a standard question for everybody leaving. And I think right now we already know the answer, which is better quality of life and more money. So yes, I think it has a lot of viability. I also think it would be interesting. I think it'll do very well. You could probably charge a premium. It sounds very similar to, the executive recruiting firms, right? So when some Fortune company decides they need a new senior VP of something, they hire these people who have who just have their tentacles in those places. So it tells me, I mean, I think it's a great idea. So I'll invest, whoever's doing it. So, so I'm in. So I want to ask one more question, and then we're going to flip it to you, Alexis. And certainly, the question is, you've mentioned something about if you've never managed a remote team. Mm-hmm. I'm that guy, right? Like I had for a long time, and I'm that control guy that you were describing. Like I was a control freak. What advice do you give for those people who are like, okay, if you're going to have to start managing remotely and you've never done it before, here's 2 books you should read. Here's what you need to think about,
I don't have any books to recommend, but I do have some things to think about. For me, one of the biggest components to my success working remotely is feeling connected to my team. And so that is done through a couple of ways. Obviously Slack, we're on Slack all the time. We're talking all the time. The other is, conscious time one-on-one with my boss and my leader and with other leaders in the company who make the effort to ask me questions and to engage with me. It is important to remind people that they're there, they're working hard, you appreciate them. Building that connection and that appreciation is really important, right? If I know someone appreciates the work that I'm doing, I'm going to work even harder. It doesn't matter where I'm located, right? The other thing is providing like a safe space to ask questions. Like the ability for someone to ping you is easy, right? But if you never answer them, what good is that? So in the office, you could, like Scott said, tap someone on the shoulder and say, hey, what about this? But as a leader, like understanding that there might be small questions throughout the day, but if that person is stuck on that one dang question, it's pretty important that you answer it. So, building a remote culture is more challenging. You don't have the in-person interaction, but I totally think it can be done if you put the work into it. And that's actually something I'm really passionate about, is like company culture, and building those relationships. And it's why I love working at Aspireship.
That's cool. So what questions do you have for us?
Okay. Number one, this is like my favorite question to ask anyone, but we did talk about travel earlier. What is your number one bucket list? You haven't been there yet, but you would give your left arm to go location.
So I got to go to NZA, New Zealand, Australia. I haven't been yet. It doesn't make any sense that I haven't been. And
shut down.
Shut down? What do you mean shut down?
It's not even open right now. So
irrelevant.
I know.
This is a magic wand wish list
Okay.
situation.
Yes.
I'm changing
Gotcha.
the rules. I'm changing
I'll
the
get you
rules.
I'll get you a didgeridoo for Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I would go. Richard?
So the first thing out of my head was Australia. I want to go to like some Eastern Bloc countries, right? I want to go to Poland and some of those other places that are just different, right? That I'm going to see something different. I'm going to experience something very different than what I'm used to seeing, right? So one sort of like, okay, what's my fun vacation? The other one's like, that would still be fun, but a different type of fun.
Yep.
So
Definitely.
how about you? What's on the bucket list?
Australia is,
Wow. Clean sweep.
Yeah. Well, what's hard too is like, it's so gigantic. Like it would be very challenging for me to pick where on Australia. Cause I want
if you're going to Australia, it's like, you got to go for like 2.5 or 3 weeks or a month.
Yep.
Right? So when we do Surf and Sales Australia, we're not going to stay for just an extra week for Thanksgiving, Scott. It's going to be a lot longer.
That would be incredible. Wow. Okay. Then my next question for you, and this is a little controversial, so I'm not going to say your favorite, but I'm going to say, who has been your most surprising guest on your podcast?
Most surprising guest. Good question.
I have a terrible memory.
I'm gonna not say the person's name, but there was one guest that we had that Richard and I afterwards were like, wow, that was kind of boring and not super good and very like just kind of all over the place and whatnot. And that episode was like one of the most viewed that we had ever had up until that particular time. And we kind of looked at each other, afterwards or had a conversation a couple of days later and we're like, what? I don't know how any of this shit works. Right. So I still remember that one. I think that was season 1.
Yes. Yes.
So that one.
I would agree with that one. I think, gosh, I'm trying to think the ones that were the most surprising. I mean, they're all, not every one of my babies is really adorable. So there's definitely some bad episodes out there. The ones, and I haven't had to do this in a while, Scott, and I don't know why. It's the ones where people can't articulate the pains they solve. Like I got on this rant for several months where people would come to me or they would come to the thing and I'd be like, well, tell people what they do. And I would immediately go, no, that's not good. Let's go. And Scott would be like chiming me on the back going, what are you doing? You're running them through, and I think I did it with Will over at Lavender. Might've been the last time I did it. He's a good guy.
In person? Have you ever met him in person?
Have I met Will? I don't know.
Yes, he was at Hard No Tour in Las Vegas.
Yes, he was. That's right.
And so I love him. I have met him multiple times in person and he is just the sweetest. I think sometimes he gets a little cerebral and he's
there's one more in particular that I was definitely surprised about, which was Brandon Bornison. Because he means so well and he really does try to do and want to help people genuinely. But at some point it just became so much about him that I literally had to like tell him to shut the fuck up, like literally. And every now and then I'll get a tweet of someone saying it and I love him and I know him. And Brandon, if you're listening, of course, you know me, but I think that's also one of the reasons he and I get along well is because he knows I'll call him out on stuff, right? I'll share my honest opinions with them. That one was surprising because I was expecting a much more high energy sales conversation, not one that sort of went in that direction.
Interesting. That totally makes sense. Yeah, that's funny, Christine. So I'm very honest in that way too. Mm-hmm. I always tell Christine, I'm telling you, if you don't want my opinion, don't ask me.
Right.
The minute you ask me, you're going to get it. And even Scott, you posted something the other day. I can't remember what exactly the question was. And then I said, well, I don't know about that, but I do know I'm a mover for change or whatever, because of the hot water.
Yes.
Well, definitely. But, with my honesty, if you win my heart and you win my trust, I will be your number one fan and I will evangelize and advocate and celebrate you from the rooftops, So it's a double-edged sword.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All
Well,
right,
thanks.
Scott, get us out of here.
All right, I'll get you out of here. That's a wrap for episode 3, season 3 of Surf and Sales podcast. Check out the Surf and Sales Summit at surfandsales.com. Thanks to our sponsors, Scratchpad, as well as Reprise. And most of all, thank you to Alexis Scott, Partnerships Manager at Aspireship. We'll see you next time, everybody.
Bye, everyone.